Hanumat Swami, also known as Professor Huber Robinson. He was born in January 12, 1948, on the Pacific island of Guam. He then swiftly rushed back to the USA, where he grew up in Arizona and California. He graduated from the University of California in 1970 with a first place prize in psychology and minor studies in biology and electrical engineering. The biologic studies included upper division mammalian physiology with surgery on unfortunate dogs. This bio has been written by him so you can get a feel for his sense of humor. And neurophysiology with surgery on equally unfortunate rats. From his own investigation and impetus from his doctoral mentor, he headed east, got a black belt in Okinawan karate, and took initiation in our Bengal Vaishnavism from Srila Prabhupada, the founder of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and then sannyas, or the order of a renounced monk, in 1984. From 1984 till 1994, he worked with Bhaktiswarup Swami and the Bhaktivedanta Institute, the scientific arm of the ISKCON Society, as a researcher, organizer, and member of the board of directors. He is currently visiting professor with the highly esteemed Ricardo Palma University in Lima, Peru, and he has lectured with the governor of West Bengal in programs in India and organized programs in psychology and the sacred in India and Latin America. Along with Nitai Gaurasundar Das, Dr. Ravi Singh, who is also an esteemed speaker here today, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, they founded NIOS, the North American Institute for Oriental and Classical Studies, in 2004. So please help me in welcoming His Holiness Hanumat Swami. The title of his topic is Science, Psyche and Spirituality, Encounters of Carl Jung with the Philosophy of the Bhagavad. His Holiness Hanumat
Lost our online audience. Okay. So good morning. Good morning, friends. Supposed to say friends. Good morning, friends. So we were asked to do this keynote address, and I think it's a little bit appropriate. See our background. We were born on Guam, grew up in the United States, graduated in psychology, University of California. We had medical background in we studied upper division mammalian physiology with Selkirk and Ganong, which I think is still a standard book like that, and eventually ended up in this whole spiritual perspective like that. And now for quite some time we've been working in this area of, especially my focus, psychology. So I guess you have a handout there, which I think parallels the slideshow. It's kind of small there. So our title is Science, Psyche, and Spirituality. Bhaktivedanta Medical Association, Houston, Texas, 2020, January 18th. C.G. Jung and the Mysticism of Ancient India. And here on the left-hand side we have a cover from Time magazine where Carl Jung was featured, And down below on the right side we have our Acharya, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami's guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. Next. So here's a little biodata for Carl Jung. Carl Gustav Jung, 1875 to 1961. Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who founded analytical psychology. In 1900, Jung worked as a research scientist at the famous Burgosy Hospital under Eugene Buehler. In 1906, During this time, he came to the attention of Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis. The two men conducted a lengthy correspondence and collaborated for a while on a joint vision of human psychology. So at this time, when Jung was actually studying psychology in 1900 at this time, it was not good to be crazy. It was not good to be psychotic or anything else. Basically, if you were a poor person, they would drive you out and kill you in the village or something like that if they couldn't accommodate you. Some people, they could accommodate a few interesting people in the village in Europe. But a lot of people, no, just drive them out and demons or whatever, and you'd be killed. If you had money, they would lock you in a mental hospital, chain you to your bed, and throw water on you once a week and give you food, you know. So it was not a good time for mental illness. But at this time, with Bueller and others, they began to consider that actually maybe we can deal with these things the same way we deal with other diseases. We've discovered microscopic causes for other diseases and viruses and antibiotics. So maybe there's a way to deal with mental illness also. So he started using free association tests and Rorschach, ink blot tests, and they developed an entire idea about what is the mind, what is the subconscious, what are different complexes. So it was a very, very interesting time. Carl Jung, right from his very youth, was having very high experiences, but he couldn't bring them out because people would have thought that he was crazy. Even much later, it was a problem. But from his very youth, he was in what we would consider a very elevated spiritual platform in many ways like that. But that was the ambience. Okay, the other side, we're contrasting now, Jung and the Bhagavata, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati. He was born in 1974 and left his body in 1937. He's following in the line of Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Rupa Goswami. And the opus magnus of Rupa Goswami in the 16th century was Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And there's a very, very excellent translation by David Haberman, who's head of the Department of, I think, Comparative Studies of Religion at the University of Wisconsin, is it? Like that. A very beautiful translation of the entire work. And of course, he's followed by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, who's the founder Acharya of ISKCON, our Acharya, in that sense, So one thing that's very interesting, if you look at this, Jung was born in 1975, and Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was born in 1874, 1875. So 1 year difference. Jung was young, was junior by 1 year. So it's very interesting because they were both going through the same ambience, the same world perspective, like that. Of course, to mention this also, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, our tradition, is a very powerful, very respected philosophical and monastic and religious line coming in India. India has very, very great traditions through Madhvacharya, Shankara, Dhaneshwar, so many different people like that. And this particular tradition that we represent, it's gone out in the streets and chatting with people with different colored socks and things like that. But behind that is a very profound academic and intellectual line, and also full mysticism with full appreciation for mental activities like that. Okay, so this is a little biography of both perspectives, looking at it. And Bhaktisiddhanta, of course, is representing this line, coming down to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Okay, then we have A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, born 1896 and left his body 1977. Now, if you look at the birth date, that means 1896 minus 1875. That Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, was Carl Jung. Carl Jung was 21 years old when Prabhupada was born. Right? Putting this all in perspective of people's background, ambience, and what they're bringing to. He was 21 years old when Prabhupada was born. Comes from the other era. Yeah. Then you look at the next one. Jung visited India in 1938. So looking at that, how old was Prabhupada then? 42 years old when Carl Jung was there. Remember that, it's important later on. There'll be a test after this. Okay. So when Jung actually visited India in 1938, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami was 42 years old. At that time he was in Calcutta, I think, with his business there. And if you also look at historically with the whole hippie movement, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami brought this whole culture to the U.S. It was very successful. Our best customers were hippies. Now our best customers are Indian software engineers. There is an ambience. You try to communicate this to different people, different time, different place, different circumstance. That's what Maharaj's lecture this morning was pointing out, and also everybody today. How to take what you know and distribute it. How to find the ambience, how to communicate. So the hippie movement, which was Abbie Hoffman, Timothy Leary, Jerry Rubin, you look at their literature, I would say 70% of their perspective was coming from Carl Jung. They were all talking about his ideas and everything else like that. So Carl Jung was a very, very good ambience for our culture at that time. Okay. And there's some nice pictures of Prabhupada preaching to his Western disciples, traveling. On the right-hand side is with Bhaktisiddhanta Damodar Swami, who is Dr. Totem Singh for the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Next. So, there's a book called Dialectical Spiritualism, and some of Prabhupada's academic disciples then presented all these Western philosophers so Prabhupada could comment on them. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, St. Thomas Aquinas, Descartes, Leibniz, John Locke, Darwin, Henry Bergson, Sartre, and Freud. And at the very end, the last one, Howard Wheeler, professor, said, that ends our session on Jung. And Srila Prabhupada said, so far he seems to be the most sensible. Yeah. So, looking at it east and west, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Bhaktisiddhanta, Rupa Goswami are appreciating that amongst Western philosophers, Carl Jung has great opportunity for us to communicate our ideas. Next. And from Carl Jung, how did he look at India? He said, we Europeans are not the only people on the earth. We are just a peninsula of Asia. And on that continent there are old civilizations where people have trained their minds in introspective psychology for thousands of years. Whereas we began with our psychology not even yesterday, but only this morning. These people have an insight that is simply fabulous. And he goes on to say, if you go to other races, to India or China, for example, you discover that these people are conscious of things for which the psychoanalyst in our countries has to dig for months. And this is all from a book called Analytical Psychology, Its Theory and Practice, which is also known as the Tavistock Lectures. Okay. So very, very good, good perspective for building a bridge from both sides, appreciation. And Jung is really an acharya in the Western point of perspective. Very, very profound person in terms of his culture. And of course, from our side, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, everybody else, very good representation of the whole Asian experience. Next. Oh, you got it, okay. So here's a reading list. This is on your handout there, okay. And the citations I just took are from the book called Analytical Psychology, but it's also more commonly known as the Tavistock Lectures. These are all available on Amazon, and you can usually get most of them as Kindle reader books. The Tavistock Foundation still exists. It's a very powerful. Anybody know the Tavistock Foundation? Anybody know about it? It's in England, in London, I think. And it's a very, very powerful institution. They organize these very big, high-end academic and intellectual, symposia, things like that. So after World War I, before World War II, they had Jung come there. He lectured for about 5 nights to all scientific people, a lot of physicians, doctors. And so those lectures are very accessible. He talks about many case studies and specific examples of schizophrenia and other things like that, psychotic behavior, many things like that, complete withdrawal. If there's time at the end, we can discuss some of these. So those are very, very nice reading material. And all of these books, when you read them, everybody that reads them finds such incredible parallels with our culture, because Jung was talking about what he was experiencing. He was actually experiencing these things. He was developing a taxonomy, a whole way to describe it in terms of Western tradition. And then from the Asian point of view, he was seeing, they have even a better perspective in many ways. Not in every way, but in many ways. Then there's also a publication called the Kundalini Yoga, and these were a series of lectures he gave with one Christian priest who had gone to India and came back a Christian priest, but with a lot more respect for Indian philosophy. And many people nowadays are very much interested in Kundalini Yoga. It's a very popular topic, so we've used this many times with great effect. And in Prabhupada's purports, there are good discussions of Kundalini Yoga with the chakras and how these relate to different levels of consciousness. And Jung puts this into very practical Western reality with dealing with people with their problems and their self-realization. Jung took psychology out of the field of curing diseases into the field of also developing your self-realization, your abilities, your qualities like that, self-realization. Whereas Freud and others were simply trying to deal with diseases. Okay. Then there is Carl Jung and the Making of Modern Psychology, The Dream of the Science. It took me 2 months to read this. This is produced by Shonu Shamdashini. He's down there from the Philemon Foundation. And it's just an incredible book, unbelievable. You can look at the history of the West from the viewpoint of wars and politics, but this is a look at the history of the Western development of thought and everything else from the point of view of psychology, you know, and philosophy. He does an incredible view of how Jung was passing in 1890 all the way up to 1960. He met Piaget, he met all these people, everybody else. In the United States was Henry James, William James, like that. And he describes all these and how the development of the intellectual ideas, and you can see why we are where we are in terms of our perspective on what is the mind, what is the self, what is health, what is disease, all these kind of things like that. You know? So that's heavyweight. You know? And finally, I just came in contact with going through this whole community then. I was hoping that Shonu Shamdashini and the Philemon Foundation would research Jung's visit to India, because he was there for about, I think, 3 months in India in 1938. You know. But talking to one of the biggest Jungians, Umberto Maturana, got his name now, he's in Argentina. He said, it's already been done. Oh, so I found it on the internet, and it's called Jung in India. And one lady, Shulagna, she researched the entire thing. This Jungian community has unbelievable quality as historians, as academic researchers. To research Jung in India, she had to find out roughly where he was traveling with the Indian Science Congress. Then she would go there and go through the archives of newspapers and dig up articles on the Indian Science Congress and who had been there. Go and talk to the children of those people and get original documents. And this is the kind of work they do. They are very serious scholars about what they're producing and so on. Yeah. So this is a very, very good, I would, boy, it's not here. Yeah, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. This was a biography. It's called an autobiography of Jung, but people say really it's a lot more Anna Jaffrey's biography of Jung. But it's excellent. They asked him, you've got to tell us what you actually think about reality and about the world before you die. He said, look, whenever I tell what I really am experiencing, the people call me psychotic, religious people attack me, the scientists attack me, and I'm only a human being. I'm not going to tell you what I actually think about reality. You got to do it. Okay, I'll work with Anna Jaffrey, and we'll produce the whole thing, but it's not going to be published until after I'm dead. Okay. So Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, it's very easy to read. It's very stimulating for anybody on any kind of spiritual perspective like that. So many things that we're, from our perspective, we're seeing, you can see that's what he's experiencing, but he doesn't know it. We know it. Yeah, yeah. And also, repeatedly, everybody finds that in their own spiritual and psychological life, these books are very, very good. They challenge you about your own character, what's happening, what your problems are. How many people here have problems with their mind? Raise your hand there, okay? Okay. Anger. How many people here would like it if everybody could see all your thoughts for one day? Okay, that's the other side of the coin. Lust, anger, greed, selfishness, petty egoistic thoughts. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So Jung is a very, very good tool. If you have people who need therapy, find a good Jungian psychologist. Very, very good, very compatible. So then we have the Philemon Foundation. And Shonu Shamdashini was one of the founders, Again, excellent historian, comes from Indian perspective. We tried to meet him for about 3 or 4 or 5 years, trying to come in contact with him. You know. So Jung was keeping his journals, they called the Black Books. Okay? And from those, he edited them and put them together in a beautiful, custom-made, hand-bound, red book. Okay? And he was describing it and stuff. You know. And next slide. Yeah. This is some of the art from the red book he did. This is, you know, world-class art, beautiful. And the entire thing he was doing in calligraphy to communicate not the bhav, the sentiment, the feeling, not just the intellectual ideas. And what it was, after he broke with Freud, he had nobody he could relate to, you know. He didn't want to go down the same path that Nietzsche went down. He comes from the heritage of Immanuel Kant, Friedrich Nietzsche, Carl Jung. And Nietzsche went crazy. So he saw this as a very dangerous thing, trying to go into the subconscious and deal with these things without a guide and everything else. So in the mornings, he would do his whole process, meditation, creative imagination, let himself go, and go through these experiences with his own subconscious, with his own dreams and everything else, and try and systematize, try and develop a whole process by which, you know, these things could be dealt with. In the afternoon, he was with his patients, and in the evening with his family. And he said this kept him grounded enough that he didn't get lost in his own subconscious mind. You know? So the Red Book was all these experiences. But when he died, his family had locked it in a vault in Switzerland and said, hey, if we release this in 1961, they're going to think our grandfather was a madman. Forget it, you can't have this. So it sat in a vault for almost 100 years, probably Jung's greatest work and so many references. So finally, Shonu Shamdashini negotiated with the family and he said, okay, it's about time, maybe we can bring it out. So I saw the pictures of this stuff and they finally brought it out of the vault. The Minister of Education for Switzerland was there, the best archivist from Hollywood was there to take with it. And it was like opening King Tut's tomb or something. It was like, here it is, after 100 years, the Red Book is coming out. And it is. It created a revolution in psychology. There's basically Jungian psychology and psychology before the Red Book was released and afterwards, like that. So all these are available. It's a great resource material. I'll give you a little, I would say start with Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. Then after that, the other lighter books, and then the one I gave, which was Carl Jung, The Making of Modern Psychology. At this level, we talk with the topmost psychologists and topmost Jungian psychologists in the world. Who are you? What are you? And after, I've only got 15 minutes for you. And after an hour and a half, we want to talk more about these things, your perspective like that. Okay, next. Okay, so that's a little bit of detail on the Jungian side. From our side again, we're mentioning that we come from this whole Vedic Sanskrit tradition, which is very profound in terms of wisdom, thought, everything else. The main literature, of course, is language is Sanskrit. So here we have something about the Bhagavata thought, okay, Sanskrit. And this is by Professor George L. Hart, University of California. He wrote a book called A Rapid Sanskrit Method, published by Motilal Banarsidass. Next. So in the preface he says, Sanskrit, is like Chinese, Arabic, Greek, and Latin, one of the few languages which has been a carrier of a culture over a long period of time. We're talking about several millennia. Thus, the variety of writings in it and the quantity of those writings are staggering. An incomplete list of subjects treated in Sanskrit, usually with great prolixity, is as follows. The 4 Vedas, we heard about them this morning, the Brahmanas and Aranyakas, the Upanishads, these are a part of the Vedas Maharaj was hinting at today. Grammar, epic Puranic literature, including 18 major Puranas, 18 minor Puranas, and hundreds of Sthala Puranas. Works on medicine, like that. How much is there? How many resources are there in Asian tradition, in Indian tradition, in terms of medicine? Oh, untapped, unadjusted in terms of our modern facilities. Logic, astronomy and astrology, mathematics, law books, architecture, music. On most of these subjects, there is an immense literature still extant. Indeed, a rough estimate of the works which will be listed in the new Catalogus Catalogorum yields a total of about 160,000 works. The Catalogus Catalogorum was, I don't know, maybe like about 15 years ago it was started. It's a bibliography of all known ancient Sanskrit texts. Logic, Maharaja, Mysore's library, medicine, this and that. And when it was last published, it included over 160,000 works in Sanskrit. I mentioned this to one of our friends, a very big professor. He laughed and he said, in Hindu Varanasi University alone, there are 100,000 uncatalogued archived manuscripts, and they're being destroyed by time. So it is such a resource, which if we don't start catching it and going through it, we're going to lose all those resources. Okay. Many so difficult that it would take years of study to properly understand them. Sanskrit does have its share of great writers. Kalidas ranks with the greatest poets. Panini is without question the greatest pre-modern grammarian. The Mahabharata ranks with the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the Bhagavad-Purana is among the finest works of devotion ever written, being equaled, in my opinion, only by other works in the Indian languages. So we have very good resources in the academic world. David Haberman, Professor Hart, many people now are beginning to appreciate the depth, the quality, and the scientific nature of Indian literature. And amongst all of these, of course, we're especially promoting the Bhagavad-Purana as being the essence of all this. And it's not only a work of devotion, but also it touches on all these different fields. It shows how your love and devotion can be expressed through architecture, medicine, political science, music, and dance. And here is, of course, our publication. If you haven't got it, a full set is available. Sponsored. What is the price? Special symposium price, right? Give us your best price right there. Across. And we'll also give you classes on it. So we've got study groups to go through the Bhagavad-Purana. Okay, next. Then also there's the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Purana is 18,000 verses. The Bhagavad-Gita is 700. So Bhagavad-Gita, from our perspective, is very accessible. Very good summary of this whole perspective on thought, mind, everything else. Especially verse number 7-4. We can all try and chant this together. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kamano buddhir evacha ahankara iti yame bina prakritir ashtada. And if somebody asks you, do you speak Sanskrit? You can say, a little. Very beautiful, very precise. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, altogether these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So here's a complete analysis of the material world. Right? And you notice, now, again, putting these words into Western vocabulary and scientific perspective is a job. Earth is whatever you can smell. Water is whatever you can taste. Fire is whatever you can feel. Fire is whatever you can see. Air is whatever you can feel. Ether is whatever you can hear. Mind is whatever you can think. Intelligence is whatever you can know. And false ego is whatever you can be. Does that include everything? Yeah. And it's very scientific, very analytical, and so on. So the Bhagavatam goes into this in great detail. My background in physical sciences, life sciences, psychology, it's been a field day connecting this up with actual formal experiments. Tomorrow morning I'll give the class and we'll go into a little bit more on this Sankhya perspective like that. But especially, of course, here we're talking about mind and manas and intelligence, but they're all very connected here. So just to summarize a little bit of the correspondences that we see in these two where it's very nice to work, is that Jung was coming up with archetypes. Are you familiar with Jungian archetypes at all? He was seeing things which were everywhere. He accepted that there is a subconscious. Prabhupada didn't like the word unconscious, neither did Jung, for the same reason, exactly. It's unconscious right now, but a couple minutes it's conscious. And also maybe it's unconscious because it's a trauma that happened to you when you were 5 years old. With some work, it becomes part of your conscious access, conscious material. So we're seeing the archetype, And he was seeing the personal subconscious, right, and collective subconscious. You know? And again, these were totally revolutionary ideas at his time. Everything is produced from the brain. The brain is, all the mind and everything else is simply products of the brain. You know? No, there is a world which actually allows us to see this world. This, of course, follows from Kant and everybody else, even Socrates, that you cannot experience the empirical world without a subtle world behind that which allows you to identify things. These are called a priori knowledge and stuff. All these things, of course, would take a long time to discuss in detail. But this is one area where we have very, very great correspondence in the, in the Virat Rup, which is how it's described in Sanskrit, the virgin, you know, the young scholar, the heroic prince. What else we got? The wise and pious priest, you know, Varna Ashram Dharma, are a part of the Virat Rup. These are not spiritual. These are things that descend upon you, like that. How much time do I have?
About a little bit over 10 minutes.
Huh?
A little bit over 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay, I'll give you one example. Okay. I have one disciple, Ananda Manjari. She was growing up in Peru many, many years ago. When whatever Daddy said, you did. Don't dress like that when you go out. Be back at 10 o'clock. Don't you? It's like back in the 1960s in Peru. So she got married to be independent, okay? Then she got pregnant, okay? Then she had a baby, Daniela, okay? Very nice little girl. She brought little Daniela home, and then she had to burp the baby, feed the baby, clean the baby, you know? And she told me that after about 3 days of being there with little Daniela, she was suddenly staring at her baby, and she had this panic attack. I'm more trapped now than I was before. This panic was going on, and her little baby daughter picked up on her mother's rejection and started crying. And she told me that what the crying was, look, I don't want to cause you any problems, but what can I do? I'm completely helpless. If you reject me, I'm finished. You know? And so it was a plea for reasonable help. She told me at that point, from the Virat Rup, from the archetype, this consciousness descended upon her. I am a mother. Like that. Yes, anybody have that experience? Suddenly, you're being a young girl and suddenly, it's there. I am a warrior. Get behind me. I'll take care of this. Yeah. These things, these archetypal consciousnesses that Jung was experiencing are real. And they're material, but they're subtle. And they show the subtle world is actually real. Okay. So this is one area where there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to communicate and work on these things. Okay, next. Maybe about like, maybe I have quite some time. Maybe about a year ago, I was here with Jai Waita Maharaj, who's a very strict Orthodox person. And I said, what we're doing is Gandharva Veda. He looked at me and went, yeah. Veda means wisdom, knowledge, self-realization. Ayurveda is the science of longevity, which we translate as medicine. Vastu Veda is architecture. You know? Danta Veda is political science. And all these are Veda. All these things can lead to ultimate perfection in life, the highest self-realization. Gandharva Veda is the fairies. The fairies are Gandharvas, and the fairies are very famous for singing, dancing, and drama. So these are all a part of Gandharva Veda. So our yoga is singing, dancing, and drama. Lord Chaitanya was always acting out the meaning of the songs. The Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami is totally based upon drama theory, coming from Bharata Muni all the way back to the beginning like that. So it's a wonderful way of self-realization. Point is here because Jung was using visual art. Jungian psychologists focus very much on creativity, expression through visual art to bring it out. But we're seeing more subtle than that is dance, and more subtle than that is music. And Jung said, yes, you can use these things. I had patients who used drama and these things to express themselves. So in terms of cosmology, the Virat Rup and the archetypes, and in terms of technique of therapy, we have such correspondence with this community. I think it's almost our last thing here. So this year, by Maharaja's mercy, we had a place to stay in Santa Barbara with a very wonderful person. I forget his name now. Very nice. It was wonderful staying with him. You know? And we went to Art and the Psyche number 4. Before it was in Rome and New York and San Francisco. The Illuminated Imagination, April 4th to 7th, University of California, Santa Barbara, sponsored by the Pacifica Graduate Institute. And it was an incredible program. There's so many young people there participating in this Jungian community, good finances. The University of California have been in negotiations for 6 months to bring Jung's original art from Zurich to put up in their museum for 3 months. They paid $50,000 for transportation and security, and they thought it was cheap at that price to have the original art there. Seeing his original art is just incredible, like that. So it was overwhelming. People making presentations. It was unbelievable. These are incredibly good, profound scholars, very sincere people. They're very intuitive, very creative. They're on the level of what we would say, again, of Virat Rupa or Hiranyagarbha appreciation of things. Some of them are very big demons that are very up there, very dangerous. We're talking about this, of dealing with them. Oh, why are you a devotee? You actually believe that? Now think about it this way. We know people with Maharam. It's a very dangerous area to work. But on the other hand, you're dealing with people who they accept the gross world is not enough to explain things. Rituals are not enough to explain things. Even intellectual understanding is not enough to explain things. You have to come to this point of creativity, involvement, meditation, and then you'll start to understand why you have these problems and how to help other people. Carl Jung was experiencing these things. He would see you maybe, like it or not. He would see your karma coming right out and going away sometimes, and he would tell you the dog is okay. And you would have a reaction and start crying from the corner of your heart. Really? Yes. He was experiencing this. If you see people like this, Prabhupada, right? Reading people's minds, talking to them, dealing with these vasanas that we're carrying life after life. So it's a very active, very powerful community, publishing new literature, and open also to communication. Look at last slide here. Okay, so we are NEOS, North American Institute for Oriental and Classical Studies, and on the paper there I think you have our address. We're struggling with a devotee here to keep our webpage going, NEOS Nimbus. And who have we worked with? We've worked with the Indian National Museum in Calcutta. We did a program on the contribution of ancient India towards making a better world. It was inaugurated by Mukundakam Sharma, former Justice of the Supreme Court of India. 2 former governors of West Bengal was there, the Ramakrishna Mission, the Bhagavad Gaudiya Math, and the Hare Krishnas. 3 days of sessions on India's contribution. The museum said we never had such a good program. We also work with the Asiatic Society in Calcutta, it's the oldest institution in India. The National Library in Peru, and San Marcos University, which is the oldest university in the Western world. Many years of incompetent, stupid, greedy, selfish activity pushed on by Srila Prabhupada. Okay. So anybody can participate. This is the kind of work we've been doing. Every salesman has their own technique, right? You've got to learn how to steal things from other people, but you've got to develop your own way of becoming a teacher, like that, communicating what you know. And what have we been doing? Psychology and the Sacred, which we have people again from the Philemon Foundation, from the Metropolitan, from the Jungian Society in New York, the Jesuits, and many people like that. And then they wanted to expand it, so the next year we did Art in the Sacred in Peru, and that was over the top. We had Aboriginal art from Australia, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was unbelievable. Every program was just like, could have gone on for 2 hours by itself. And they wanted to expand it to participants. And so now for 3 years we're working on education of the sacred. And our program will be, we're publishing a magazine. We have an entire journal, which is in the 5th issue like that, Solaris, which is very good quality. Nobel laureate candidates, everything else, devotees writing for it. And so this education of the sacred, we did the first presentation, it was very good. Next one will be in Peru. We go other places also. The main focus will be Peru and Chile, the end of November and the end of October and the start of November. And Francis Clooney from the Jesuits, from the Harvard School of Divinity, probably coming, David Haberman. So we're coming to the point. I'm almost at the end of my candle. Like maybe one more year I can do this. Other people have to take over. This is what we've done. There's a tremendous, on a global basis now, we're dealing with the topmost global people. Jesuits have 16,000 sannyasis, and they're very interested in working with us and so on. And they need our help, we need their help. And then on like that. Education is sacred. And one thing we've also been doing is world classical literature. Hamlet and Arjuna has been unbelievable. We've been presenting it so many times, the topmost cultural programs, and we got almost dying from doing it. But the parallels are so incredible and at a deep level. Another one is the Song of Solomon. If you're Christian, you know this from the Bible or Jewish tradition, right? Saint Bernard de Clairvaux, he talks about the same things we're talking about. So interfaith dialogue can go so deeply in terms of experiences like that. And we can stimulate from our tradition, they can stimulate from theirs. To be a Jesuit sannyasi, you have to risk your life once a year. Unless you go out and preach to the Aborigines and maybe 5% actually die or something. Okay, so it's like, yeah, hallelujah. Yeah. Very, very, it's not just like we actually, wow, these people have something to offer us, and we have something to offer them, and that's the best feeling in the world. We're actually feeling sincere respect for each other. And so we're going to finish off then on time, because we are German. Thank you. And our esoteric webpage, is jayarama.us, Jnana Academy. And you can join us, even if you're a lion on a bicycle, we'll take you right through the doorway to another reality. There's a picture there, so I think I said it right. Okay, so thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.